The approaching storm, the observation deck of Defense Station Omega, hummed with quiet tension as Captain Elena Vasquez stared at the holographic display floating before her. 300 warships. The number seemed impossible, yet there they were, closing in on the small human colony of New Havana like a swarm of metallic locusts. Elena's dark eyes tracked each vessel as it moved through the star system, her mind already calculating trajectories, weapons ranges, and possibilities. She was a small woman, barely 5 feet tall, but everyone on the station knew better than to underestimate her. Elena had earned her position not through political connections or family legacy, but through 15 years of tactical brilliance in the Terran Defense Academy. She had graduated top of her class in strategic warfare, specializing in asymmetric combat scenarios where smaller forces defeated larger ones through intelligence and creativity rather than brute strength. Behind her, Lieutenant Marcus Webb cleared his throat nervously. He was young, fresh from training, and this was his first real crisis. His hands trembled slightly as he checked the sensor readings again, hoping the numbers would somehow change. They did not. The fleet was still there, still approaching, and still broadcasting hostile intent on every frequency. Commander, Thrax of the Krellian Empire had made his intentions crystal clear. The message had arrived 2 hours ago, delivered, with the kind of arrogance that only came from a species that had conquered 47 worlds without ever facing serious resistance. The Krellians were massive creatures, standing nearly 8 feet tall with thick armored skin that ranged from deep purple to midnight black. Their 4 arms ended in clawed hands, capable of crushing steel, and their faces featured 3 eyes, arranged in a triangle pattern that gave them exceptional depth perception. The message had been simple and direct. Surrender the colony within 12 hours or face complete annihilation. Turn over all resources, all technology, and all citizens to become workers for the Krellian mining operations. Resistance would result in the extinction of every human on New Havana. The ultimatum was standard procedure for the Krellian Empire, a formula they had perfected over centuries of conquest. What Commander Thrax did not know was that humans had been studying the Krellian Empire for the past 7 years. Every battle, every conquest, every tactical decision had been carefully recorded and analyzed by Terran intelligence. Humanity had learned a valuable lesson early in their contact with galactic civilization. Watch, listen, and learn before revealing your true capabilities. Elena turned away from the display and walked to her command chair. Her crew watched her carefully, waiting for orders, hoping for reassurance. There were only 83 people on Defense Station Omega. The colony below held 12,000 colonists, families who had traveled across the stars to build new lives on New Havana's fertile plains. They were farmers, teachers, engineers, and artists. They were not soldiers. They depended on Elena and her small crew to protect them. She sat down and pressed a button on her armrest. All hands, this is Captain Vasquez. I know you're all aware of the situation. I know the numbers look impossible. 300 Krellian warships against 1 defense station and a handful of patrol craft. But I need you to trust me. I need you to remember your training. And I need you to understand that everything we do in the next few hours will determine not just the fate of this colony, but the future of humanity's place in the galaxy. Elena paused, letting her words sink in. The Krellians think we're weak. They think because we're a young species, we're easy prey. They're about to learn why that assumption is the biggest mistake any species can make when facing humans. Stand ready. Follow your orders precisely. And remember, we don't fight like they expect us to fight. She closed the channel and turned to her communications officer, a clever woman named Sarah Kim, who had once worked in psychological operations for Terran intelligence. Sarah, open a channel to Commander Thrax. Let's have a conversation. The main view screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of the Krellian flagship. Commander Thrax sat in a massive command throne, his purple-black armor gleaming under the harsh lighting. His three eyes focused on Ilana with what appeared to be amusement. When he spoke, his voice was deep and rumbling, translated by the universal language protocols into something humans could understand. "Ah," the primitive commander finally responds. "Have you come to accept the inevitable surrender? It will go easier for your people if you submit now. The Empire can be merciful to those who do not resist." Elena smiled, but it was not a warm expression. It was the smile of someone who knew something their opponent did not. "Commander Thrax, I've studied your military record. 47 conquered worlds. Impressive. You've never lost a battle. Never even faced serious resistance. That must make you feel very confident right now." Thrax's mandibles clicked together in what might have been laughter. "You speak as if you have a choice in this matter, human. We have 300 warships. You have one small station. The outcome is predetermined." "Let me tell you a story, Commander," Elena said, leaning forward in her chair. 7 years ago, when humanity first made contact with the galactic community, we were excited. We thought we'd found friends among the stars. But then we started monitoring galactic communications. We watched your empire conquer the Delphic colonies. We saw how the Vraxian collective crushed the Pelton resistance. We studied every conflict, every battle, every tactical maneuver used by every military power in the galaxy. She paused, watching Thrax's expression carefully. The alien commander's amusement was fading, replaced by something that might have been curiosity or concern. "And do you know what we learned, Commander? We learned that galactic warfare is predictable. Every species follows the same patterns. Show up with overwhelming force, demand surrender, crush any resistance with superior firepower. It works because most species haven't spent their entire evolutionary history perfecting the art of killing each other." Elena stood up and walked closer to the view screen. "Humans are different, Commander. We spent 10,000 years fighting wars on our home world. We developed strategies and tactics that your empire has never encountered. We learned how to win battles when outnumbered. We discovered that the most dangerous weapon in any conflict is not the biggest gun, but the most creative mind." Thrax's three eyes narrowed. "You speak boldly for someone about to die, human. What do you think you can do against 300? Warships? Nothing at all," Elena admitted with a shrug. "Defense Station Omega couldn't stop even 10 of your ships, let alone 300. You're absolutely right about that. But you're making the same mistake that every conquered species made before they fell to your empire. You're assuming you know everything about your enemy." She gestured to Lieutenant Webb, who began entering commands into his console. "Tell me, Commander, what are your sensors showing right now?" There was a pause as Thrax turned to consult with his own crew. Elena watched his expression change, from confidence to confusion to something approaching alarm. When he looked back at the view screen, his mandibles were clenched tight. "Impossible. My sensors show multiple contacts appearing throughout the system. Dozens of them? Hundreds? Where did they come from?" Elena's smile widened. "They were always there, Commander. You just couldn't see them. While your scouts were cataloging our colony, counting our civilian ships, and assessing what they thought was our complete military capability, we were watching you watch us. Every stealth technology, every sensor jamming technique, every camouflage system we developed was specifically designed to be invisible to Krellian detection methods." The view screen split, showing both Thrax's face and a tactical display of the star system. Red icons representing Krellian warships were now surrounded by blue icons representing human vessels. The numbers were staggering. For every Krellian ship, there were 3 human ships. 900 warships, Commander," Elena said quietly. "Each one crewed by humans who have studied your tactics, learned your weaknesses, and trained specifically to fight the Krellian Empire. We didn't build these ships hoping we'd never need them. We built them knowing that sooner or later, someone like you would come to our worlds and demand our surrender." Thrax stared at the display, his 3 eyes wide with disbelief. His clawed hands gripped the arms of his command throne so tightly that the metal began to dent. "This is a trick, some kind of sensor deception." "Lieutenant Webb," Elena said calmly, "please demonstrate to Commander Thrax that our ships are quite real." Webb's fingers danced across his console. On the tactical display, one of the blue icons moved toward a small asteroid. A brilliant flash of energy erupted from the human ship, and the asteroid simply ceased to exist, vaporized into its component atoms. "Plasma lance technology," Elena explained. "We developed it by studying the weapon systems of 6 different galactic species and combining their best features. Each of our ships carries 4 of them. That's 3,600 plasma lances aimed at your fleet right now, Commander. Your shields can absorb maybe 3 direct hits before failing. Do the math." The bridge of the Krellian flagship had gone completely silent. Elena could see other Krellian officers in the background, their massive forms frozen in shock as they realized the trap they had flown into. "You're wondering how this happened," Elena continued. "You're thinking about all the intelligence reports, all the reconnaissance missions, all the data that said humanity was primitive and weak. Let me explain it to you. We lied, Commander. We showed you exactly what we wanted you to see. We let your scouts observe our civilian infrastructure while hiding our military capabilities. We acted like frightened primitives while building the largest fleet in this sector of space. We played the role of easy prey while sharpening our teeth." She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "And now, Commander Thrax, you're going to help us send a message to the rest of the galaxy." Asterisk the hidden arsenal. His silence on Commander Thrax's bridge stretched for nearly a full minute. Elena watched as the massive Krellian commander processed the impossible situation he found himself in. His 3 eyes darted between the tactical display and Elena's face, searching for some sign of weakness, some indication that this was still a bluff he could call. He found none. Finally, Thrax spoke, his voice lacking its earlier arrogance. "What message would that be, Captain Vasquez?" Elena walked back to her command chair and sat down, crossing her legs casually, as if discussing nothing more important than the weather. "The message is simple, Commander. There's a new rule in the galaxy now, and every species needs to learn it quickly. Never challenge the Terrans. Never assume we're weak because we're young. Never think that our peaceful appearance means we've forgotten how to fight. And most importantly, never threaten our homes." She gestured to Sarah Kim, who brought up a new display showing detailed information about the Krellian Empire's military structure, classified documents about their conquest strategies, and even personal files on Thrax himself. The Krellian commander's eyes widened as he recognized information that should have been impossible for humans to access. "For 7 years. Commander, we've had intelligence operatives embedded throughout the galactic community. We've infiltrated your communication networks, studied your culture, learned your languages, and mapped every aspect of your empire. We know about the rebellion brewing on Krell Prime. We know about the resource shortages your mining operations are facing. We know about the political factions within your high command who question the endless expansion policy." Elena paused, letting that information sink in. "We know everything about you, Commander. But more importantly, we know how to defeat you. Not just your fleet here, but your entire empire if necessary. We've run 10,000 combat simulations. We've studied every battle you've ever fought. We've identified weaknesses in your tactics that you don't even know exist." Lieutenant Marcus Webb stepped forward, his earlier nervousness replaced by focused professionalism. "Captain, all defense platforms are reporting ready status. The Aegis formation is locked in position. Excellent, Elena said, then addressed Thrax again. The Aegis formation, Commander, is something we developed specifically for this scenario. 900 ships arranged in a three-dimensional matrix that creates overlapping fields of fire. Every point in space around your fleet is covered by at least 12 weapon systems. There's literally nowhere you can move that won't put you in someone's crosshairs. Thrax's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation in Krellian physiology. You would massacre my entire fleet? That would be an act of war against the Krellian Empire. You would face retaliation from every world we control. Would we? Elena asked calmly. She nodded to Sarah Kim, who brought up another display. This one showed real-time intelligence feeds from multiple Krellian-controlled worlds. Workers organizing protests, underground resistance movements, communications between rebel cells. The Empire was far less stable than it appeared from the outside. Your empire is built on fear and oppression, Commander. The species you've conquered hate you. They obey because they believe resistance is futile. But what happens when they learn that someone successfully stood up to the mighty Krellian Empire? What happens when they discover that 300 of your best warships surrendered without firing a shot because they were outmaneuvered by a species you considered primitive? Elena stood and walked toward the view screen again. I'm giving you a choice, Commander Thrax. A real choice, not the kind of false ultimatum you offered us. Option 1. You attack us. We destroy your entire fleet. Not a single ship escapes. 3,000 Krellian warriors die today, and your empire loses face across the galaxy. The rebellions start within a week. Your high command falls within a month. The Krellian Empire collapses within a year. She held up a second finger. Option 2. You power down your weapons. Allow us to disarm your ships temporarily and listen to what humanity has to propose. No one dies today. Your crews go home safely. And maybe, just maybe, we find a way forward that doesn't require endless conquest and bloodshed. Thrax leaned back in his command throne, his forearms crossed in a defensive posture. You speak of peace after threatening to destroy my fleet. How am I to trust anything you say? Because, Commander, if we wanted to destroy you, you'd already be dead, Elena replied simply. We've had you in our sights since you entered the system. We could have destroyed half your fleet before you even knew we were here. But we didn't. Do you know why? When Thrax didn't answer, Elena continued. Because humans understand something that your empire has forgotten. War should always be the last option, not the first. We don't want to conquer you. We don't want to rule over your people. We just want to be left alone to live our lives in peace. But we will absolutely defend ourselves and our allies with every weapon at our disposal, if forced to do so. She turned to her tactical officer. Lieutenant Shun, what's the status of the Krellian flagship's power systems? A young woman with sharp features and steady hands checked her console. Their main reactor is running at full capacity, Captain. Shields at maximum. Weapons are charged and ready. They haven't powered down at all. Elena looked back at Thrax. You're still thinking about fighting. You're calculating odds, considering tactics, wondering if maybe your ships are fast enough or strong enough to break through our formation. Let me save you some time, Commander. They're not. We've modeled this exact scenario 837 times. In every single simulation, your fleet is destroyed in less than 4 minutes. The longest any of your ships survived was 6 minutes and 12 seconds. And that was only because we assumed your commanders would make better tactical decisions than they actually would. For the first time, Thrax showed genuine emotion. His voice carried a note of desperation. What do you want from us? What is this proposal? Elena smiled, and this time it was warmer, more genuine. We want to change the rules, Commander. The galaxy has operated the same way for thousands of years. Strong species conquer weak ones. Empires expand through violence. Might makes right. That system has created a galaxy full of oppressed peoples living in fear. Humanity wants to offer an alternative. She gestured, and a new display appeared showing a complex network of trade agreements, defense pacts, and diplomatic arrangements. We propose the formation of a new coalition. Free worlds working together for mutual benefit, not conquest. Shared technology, shared resources, shared defense. Any species can join, including former members of the Krellian Empire, if they choose independence over servitude. Thrax studied the display, his three eyes moving rapidly across the information. The High Command would never accept this. It goes against everything the Empire stands for. Then the High Command will fall, Elena said flatly. Commander, we've already been in contact with several resistance movements on worlds you control. They're ready to rise up. All they need is a sign that the Empire can be defeated. You can either be the commander who brought that empire down through stubbornness and pride, or you can be the one who had the wisdom to change course when facing an unwinnable situation. Lieutenant Webb spoke up again. Captain, we're receiving communications from the other Krellian ships. Several captains are requesting private channels with Commander Thrax. Elena nodded to Sarah Kim. Let them through, but monitor everything. The view screen split into multiple sections, showing various Krellian bridge officers. Elena could see the fear and uncertainty on their alien faces. One of them, a younger Krellian with lighter purple skin, spoke urgently to Thrax in their native language. The translation came through a moment later. Commander, my sensors confirm the human fleet's positions and capabilities. We cannot win this battle. I have 200 warriors on my ship who deserve to see their families again. I'm requesting permission to stand down. Another captain joined in. Commander Thrax, I've been analyzing their weapons. The plasma lance technology alone gives them a 3-to-1 firepower advantage. Combined with their superior positioning and numerical superiority, any attack would be suicide. One by one, the Krellian captains reported similar assessments. The mathematical reality of the situation was undeniable. They were outgunned, outmaneuvered, and outmatched. Fighting would accomplish nothing except their own destruction. Thrax sat silently, listening to his subordinates confirm what he already knew. Finally, he raised one of his 4 hands, silencing the others. He looked directly at Elena, and she could see the defeat in his 3 eyes. But she could also see something else, a grudging respect. You have won this day, Captain Vasquez. I will order my fleet to power down weapons and prepare to be disarmed. But I want your word, your promise as a military officer, that my crews will be treated with dignity and respect. You have my word, Commander, Elena said seriously. Human military doctrine includes strict rules about the treatment of defeated enemies. Your people will be housed comfortably, fed well, and allowed to communicate with their families. Once we've secured your ships and removed the weapon systems, you'll be free to return to Krellian space with a message for your High Command. What message? Elena's expression became serious. That the age of easy conquest is over. That humanity stands ready to defend not just ourselves, but any species that asks for our protection. That we're offering a chance for peaceful coexistence, but we're also prepared for war if necessary. And most importantly, that there's a new rule in the galaxy now. She paused, making sure Thrax was listening carefully. Never challenge the Terrans. Over the next 6 hours, the Krellian fleet systematically powered down its weapons under the watchful eyes of the human ships. Boarding parties from the Terran defense fleet moved through the Krellian vessels, cataloging weapon systems and ensuring compliance. Throughout the process, Elena's promise was kept. The Krellian warriors were treated with professional courtesy, even as their ships were being disarmed. Elena stood on the observation deck of Defense Station Omega, watching the process unfold. Marcus Webb joined her, carrying 2 cups of coffee. He handed her one and stood beside her in comfortable silence for a moment. "Do you think it will work, Captain?" he finally asked. "Do you think the other empires will learn the lesson?" Elena took a sip of coffee and considered the question. "Some will, Marcus. Some species will look at what happened here today and understand that humanity isn't prey. They'll approach us with respect and openness. Others will be too proud or too stupid to learn. They'll test us, probe our defenses, maybe even attack. And when they do, we'll be ready. We've been preparing for 7 years, Marcus. We've built fleets, trained warriors, developed technologies that the galaxy has never seen. We're not looking for war, but we won't shy away from it either." She turned to look at him, seeing the young officer, who had been trembling with fear just hours ago, now standing straight and confident. "You did well today, Lieutenant. You kept your composure when it mattered most." Marcus smiled. "I just followed your lead, Captain. You knew exactly what you were doing from the start." "Not exactly," Elena admitted. "I had a plan, but plans can always fall apart. The truth is, we got lucky." Commander Thrax was smart enough to recognize when he was beaten. Another commander might have been too proud and attacked anyway. Then we would have had to carry out our threats, and thousands would have died. But they didn't. That has to count for something. Elena nodded slowly. "It does. It counts for everything. Because now, instead of 3,000 dead Krellians creating martyrs and rage, we have 3,000 living witnesses who will go home and tell stories about the day they met humans and learn that we're not monsters. We're just a species that refuses to be victims." Sarah Kim's voice came through the communication system. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from Terran Command. Admiral Rodriguez wants to speak with you." Elena and Marcus returned to the bridge, where the main view screen showed Admiral Carlos Rodriguez, the commander of Earth's defensive forces. He was an older man with gray hair and sharp eyes that had seen decades of military service. "Captain Vasquez," the Admiral said, "I've been reviewing the situation reports from New Havana. Congratulations on a brilliantly executed operation. You've done exactly what we hoped someone would do, prove that humanity can defend itself without becoming the monsters we oppose. Thank you, sir. Though I have to admit, there were some tense moments." Rodriguez smiled. "The best operations always have tense moments. That's how you know they're real and not simulations. Now, I'm transmitting new orders. The Krellian Empire isn't the only power that's been watching Earth with hungry eyes. Word of what happened today will spread fast. Some species will approach us as potential allies. Others will see us as threats that need to be eliminated before we become too strong." Elena nodded, understanding where this was going. "You want me to prepare for more confrontations?" "I want you to prepare for everything, Captain. We're upgrading Defense Station Omega to a full military command center. You'll have authority over all defensive operations in this sector. More ships, more personnel, more resources. We're also sending diplomatic teams to follow up on your opening with Commander Thrax. If we can turn the Krellian Empire from enemy to neutral, or even ally, it changes the entire balance of power in the galaxy." "What about the other colonies, sir?" "New Havana isn't the only human settlement vulnerable to attack. We're implementing similar defensive strategies at every colony. The days of hiding our military capabilities are over, Captain. Today, you showed the galaxy who we really are. Now we need to make sure they understand the full implications of that revelation." The transmission ended, and Elena sat back in her command chair. Around her, the bridge crew continued their work, monitoring the Krellian fleet, coordinating with boarding parties, and processing the massive amount of data generated by the encounter. 3 months later, Elena stood in the same observation deck, but the view had changed dramatically. Defense Station Omega had been expanded and upgraded, now bristling with weapons platforms and defensive shields. The human fleet in the system had grown to over 2,000 ships. And most surprising of all, there were non-human vessels present as well. The first to arrive had been representatives from the Pelton Resistance, a species that had been conquered by the Krillians decades ago. They had heard about humanity's victory and came seeking alliance. Then came the Delphic survivors, the Aquarian collective representatives, and even a delegation from a minor Krellian colony that had declared independence after news of Thrax's defeat reached them. Marcus Webb, now promoted to commander, joined Elena at the observation window. It's amazing how fast things change. 3 months ago, we were an unknown species hoping to be left alone. Now we're at the center of a growing coalition. Elena watched a Pelton cargo ship dock with the station, delivering supplies as part of the new trade agreements. Change was inevitable, Marcus. The question was never whether humanity would play a role in galactic affairs. The question was what kind of role we would play. Conqueror or protector, aggressor or defender, monster or guardian. And we chose guardian? We chose to be what we needed someone to be for us, Elena replied. When we first reached the stars, we hoped to find friends and allies. Instead, we found empires and predators. So we became strong enough to protect ourselves and others who couldn't protect themselves. A communication alert sounded. Sarah Kim's voice came through. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Council. They want to discuss humanity's petition for membership. Elena smiled. The Galactic Council had ignored humanity's diplomatic overtures for years, dismissing Earth as too primitive for serious consideration. Now, after demonstrating military prowess and forming alliances with multiple species, suddenly humanity was worth talking to. Tell them I'll be happy to discuss terms, but make it clear that we're negotiating as equals, not supplicants. Humanity isn't asking for permission to exist anymore. We're announcing our presence and our intentions. They can either work with us or work around us. As the message was sent, Elena reflected on how far they'd come. The Krellian fleet had returned home with its ships intact, but its pride wounded. Commander Thrax had delivered humanity's message to the High Command, sparking fierce debates within the Empire about future policy. Some factions wanted revenge. Others recognized that humanity represented a new kind of power in the galaxy, one that couldn't be conquered through traditional means. The message had spread to other empires as well. The Vraxian Collective had sent observers to study human tactics. The Zenturi Alliance had opened diplomatic channels. Even species humanity had never heard of or making contact. Curious about these Terrans, who had appeared seemingly from nowhere to challenge the established order, and everywhere. In military academies and command centers across dozens of worlds, a new doctrine was being taught. A new rule that every commander needed to understand if they wanted to survive in the changing galaxy.